Hello and welcome, class 645. Wow, we are progressing. Yes, sir, a lot of classes. We've done, you and I, we've done 644 classes. And now we're starting on class number 645. Will we finish it? I'm sure we will. I don't think I will die in front of the camera. Yes, if I die in front of the camera, Marta, will you keep the recording? Yeah? So you can have a recording of me saying goodbye definitively. But in any case, 645, let's get going. I don't think I'm going to die during the next 24 minutes, all right? Vocabulary, let's continue where we left off yesterday on number... La numeración aquí no se ve. It's on page 139, around number 20. Ponerse nervioso. To get nervous. Me estoy poniendo nervioso. I'm getting nervous because Marta is making me nervous. It's interesting. Why am I, mi amiga Maya, why am I getting nervous? Why am I getting nervous? I'm getting nervous because she's making me nervous. So uno se pone nervioso porque otro le pone, por ejemplo. To get nervous and to make. I'm getting nervous because she's making me nervous. Ahora, si fuera loco, I'm going crazy or I'm going mad because she's driving me crazy. She's driving. Different verbs. Going, driving, getting, making. I'm getting nervous. Yes, Richard, are you nervous by nature? By what? By nature. Nature. Naturaleza, por naturaleza. Yes, nature, no, nature. Nature. Are you nervous? Are you a nervous person? ¿Cómo se pronuncia nervous? Nervios. No. Nervous. Primera sílaba rima con burn, quemar. Burn, nervous. Nervous. Segunda sílaba, us. For you, for them, for us. Nervous. Do you get nervous easily? No, I don't get nervous very easily. Yeah, I'm pretty easygoing. I'm an easygoing guy. Easygoing, fácil yendo, que es tranquilo. Tranquilo. I'm an easygoing guy. Yeah, I don't get nervous very often. Revisar o repasar is to look over. Yeah. I'm looking over the book. Yeah. I like it. I'm looking over the book. I'm looking over a four-leaf clover that I've overlooked before. This is a very famous song. Estoy mirando desde arriba, por eso over. Un trébol de cuatro hojas. ¿Qué tono? I'm looking over a four-leaf clover that I've overlooked before. To overlook is pasar por alto. To look over is echar una vista general. So it's very difficult. Be careful. If you make the mistake, if somebody says, "Excuse me, Pedro, have you overlooked anything?" I said, "Yes, I have overlooked everything." No es que hayas pasado por alto todo, es que has revisado todo. It's look over, to overlook. To overlook is por despiste, pasas por alto. Yeah, I overlooked. But this is to look over. But to look over en sentido de revisar o repasar un informe o algo antes de enviarlo. To look it over, let me look over the report. Let me look over the report before sending it to make sure there aren't any typos. Typos. It's a very common word in English. How do you spell it? Tipos, como tipos de persona. Se escribe typos. Pero realmente es con Y. Typos. And what does typos mean? Erratas. Viene de errores tipográficos al tipear o al pasar a máquina. It's an old word. There's a mistake, there's a typo. A typographical error. And we call it typos. And we still use it today. Las erratas. Yes. Has puesto una coma en vez de un punto. Oh, no, it's a typo. That's a typo. So if you look over a report, often you find mistakes and typos. Errores y erratas. Mistakes and typos. Notar. To notice. Tú que estás un poco cansado hoy. I notice that you're a little bit tired today. I remember many years ago, siglo XIII creo que era, when I was working in Zorita, Almonacid de Zorita, and I was teaching English in a nuclear plant, la central nuclear de Zorita. And every day I had lunch in la residencia de la central con los solteros, porque los casados tenían casitas, en chaletitos. So I was having lunch, and my Spanish was good. Good, my Spanish was very good, but it was from reading. And I remember once I was having with Eugenio, Pablo, Puri y Pili. All right, Purificación y Pilar, Puri y Pili. We were eating, and something came up, and they asked me, and I said, no, they asked me something about the soup. ¿Hay algo en eso? No, está muy salado. And I said, apenas lo noto. And Puri started laughing. I said, what's the problem? He said, nadie habla así, apenas lo noto. No me entero casi, or something, some different, but I was using book Spanish. Notice, apenas lo noto, is I can, con el verbo can, to be able to. I can hardly notice it. I can hardly notice it, or I can barely is por los pelos. I can barely notice it. I can hardly notice. To notice. También un anuncio en un tablón de anuncios es a notice. Notificación, it's a notice. Pero también se dice notification, pero no en este caso. Notification es un mensaje, es a notification. A partir de mañana vamos a usar diferentes luces. Que conste, it's a notification. All right. Now notice is on the bulletin board. Se busca vivo o muerto, recompensa $500. Wanted, dead or alive, reward $500. In the sheriff's office, there's a notice on the wall or on the bulletin board. Tablón de anuncios is bulletin board. All right, bulletin, de boletines, bulletin. Notar is to notice, parecerse a, to resemble. Oh, man, I love this word, resemble. Asemejarse, se asemeja a. It resembles. You look like Robert Redford. You look just like Robert Redford. You look exactly like Robert Redford. You're the spitting image, curiosa expresión, imagen escupiente, spitting. Spit is escupir. You're the spitting image of Robert Redford. You resemble, asemejarse a, parecerse a. You resemble, escrito resemble. You resemble Robert Redford. Do I really? Que sí. Do I really? No, Richard, you don't look like. Well, who do I look like? Well, you resemble Dustin Hoffman. Dustin Hoffman. Do I look like Dustin Hoffman? Well, your nose. All right. Who do I look like? Who do I look like? You don't look like anybody I know. You don't resemble anybody I know. Dar por sentado, to take for granted. No des por sentado. Que yo vaya a estar aquí siempre. I could make a decision anytime to retire completely. So don't take for granted that you're going to have me as your teacher forever, because it's not going to happen. To take for granted. Hoy en día damos por sentado cosas que hace un siglo la gente se mataba por tener. Yes, these lights, television, radio, crossing the Atlantic in 7 hours, my God. Yeah, if Jules Verne came today, he would need tranquilizers to assimilate Everything that we, you and me, and Marta, we take for granted. Take for granted. Take for granted. Dar por sentado. And so don't take me for granted. Se dice en inglés, no me deis por sentado. O sea, no creéis que voy a estar aquí para vosotros siempre, ¿eh? Como cosecha. Don't take me for granted. All right? Donde hay confianza, don't take me for granted, okay? To take something for granted. Yeah, to take for granted. We use it a lot, to take for granted. Doy por supuesto, doy por sentado que vas a estar mañana, no? I take for granted you're going to be here. Granted, grant is conceder. Te voy a conceder una beca, I'm going to grant you. Or te voy a conceder mi tiempo, grant. Como el general Grant. To grant. A grant es una beca. Pero no una beca académica, es una beca para investigación o parecido. That's a grant. Beca académica is scholarship. Scholarship, a grant. A grant is usually for research, for some type of special project, and you receive a grant. It's very popular in the United States. There are thousands of foundations and NGOs that offer grants. And you can find a list of 1,000 different grants. Yeah. Para el estudio de las hormigas negras del sur de África. Oh, okay, fine. There's a grant for the black ants in South Africa. But granted, dar por concedido, literalmente, take, o tomar como concedido, to take for granted. Don't take me for granted. Don't take for granted that I'm going to be here. Don't take for granted that every day at 7:30 in the morning on Channel 2, you're going to have an English class. Take advantage of this class now. Take advantage of this class now. Make the most of this class now. Profit from this class now, because it won't last forever. And don't take for granted that I will be here forever, because I'm not immortal. All right, dar por sentado, take for granted. Injusto, unfair. Es injusto. It's unfair. It's unfair. Yeah, I'm on television every day at 7:30 in the morning. That's early. I want to be on television during prime time. Prime time. Between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. in the evening. Yeah. Yeah, we're in the morning. Nobody gets up at 7:30 to watch. Nobody watches television at 7:30. Yeah, it's unfair. Es injusto que nos coloquen, Marta, en esta hora tan temprana. It's unfair. It's unfair. I'm going to complain. I'm going to complain to the big bosses. I'm going to complain to the head honchos. Okay, and we're going to move this into prime time, Marta. Would you like to have this program in prime time? Yeah? Okay, to compete with the big boys, right? All right. It's unfair, or it's not fair. Se dice incluso más, creo que simplemente no es justo. En vez de es injusto. It's not fair. It's not fair. Altibajos, ups and downs. Life is full of ups and downs. Altibajos. Life is full of ups and downs. Obstacles. Yes, it's an obstacle course, life, and there are a lot of ups and downs. You have to be able to take the ups and downs and to adapt, y capear, as you say in Spain, to support and to be able to handle the ups and downs in life. And finally, cera, wax. El Museo de Cera, the Wax Museum. Have you ever been to the Wax Museum? Have you ever been to the Wax Museum? Maybe in the future, they'll put me teaching English in the Wax Museum. And you go into the Wax Museum. Anda, mira, el Bauanes está aquí. All right. Hasta la sopa. Teaching English in the Wax Museum. All right. And the wax candles, las velas, candles are made of wax. Yeah, wax. And also, the bees make wax. Wax. All right. Where are we? Paragraphs. Yes, sir. We have some paragraphs. Paragraph number 143 from our 198 paragraphs. Paragraph 143. It takes forever. A ver si entiendes esto, Marta. It takes forever to dry those sheets. I don't know what kind of material they're made of, but I can leave them out in the summer sun for 10 hours, and they're still too damp to use. In rainy weather, I simply don't use them. Is it clear? This person is complaining. All right? Complaining about, I assume es do por sentado. I take for granted que no, I assume es, será una mujer. I assume it's a woman who's speaking. It takes forever to dry those sheets. It takes forever. Exagerada. It takes forever to dry those sheets. She likes to exaggerate. It takes forever to dry those sheets. To dry what? To dry is secar, ¿no? Yeah. O sea, se tarda una eternidad. ¿En secar qué? Aquellas sábanas, those sheets. It takes forever to dry those sheets. My God, it takes forever to dry those sheets. I don't know what kind of material they're made of, but I can leave them out in the summer sun for 10 hours and they're still too damp to use. Yeah. In rainy weather, I simply don't use them. Okay. Strange sheets. Son unas sábanas muy curiosas y extrañas. Yeah. It takes forever to dry those sheets. I don't know what material they're made of. ¿De qué estarán hechos? I don't know what material. Sí, material. No sé de qué material están hechos. O hechas son sábanas. I don't know what kind of material they're made of. I don't know what kind of material they are made of. De qué están hechas. I don't know what kind of material they're made of. I don't know what kind of material. Fíjate, como un nativo. Kind of, clase de, tipo de, no sé qué clase de material, qué tipo de material. Decimos kind of or type of. Pero en ambos casos, el nativo lo dice como a table, a microphone, a shirt, a finger, a watch. Kinda material. You know, kind of material. I don't know what kind of material they're made of. They are made of. I don't know what kind of material they're made of. Kind of material. I don't know what type of material. I don't know what kind of material they're made of. Yeah. It takes forever to dry those sheets. I don't know what kind of material they're made of, but I can leave them out in the summer sun. Yeah, you hang out the sheets, yeah, in the summer sun. I can leave them out, dejarlos ahí fuera. I can dejar. No me dejes, don't leave me. Leave me. Déjalo a Marta. Voy a dejarlo a Marta. I'm going to leave it to Marta. Leave it to Marta. The problems in this room, don't worry. We can leave them to Marta. She'll solve the problems here. She's a problem solver. Leave. Y las sábanas también las puedo dejar en el sol veraniego. In the summer sun. In the summertime when the weather is fine. In the summer sun. I can leave them out in the summer sun for 10 hours. And they're still too damp to use. Damp is humid, húmedo. Now, there are 4 words for húmedo. There's wet, que es mojado. La mesa está mojada. It's wet. Humid, con mucho Hugh Grant, humid. Hewlett-Packard, Hugh Grant, humid. Humid es humedad atmosférica. Hay ciertas zonas muy húmedas y otras secas. Madrid is not a humid city. Barcelona is more humid. That's humid. Moist is siempre, women always want to have moist hands. Moist. Es como la humedad de la mantequilla. It's moist. Yeah. All right. And damp. Damp. Como suena. Damp. And damp is never positive. Damp is la humedad de los sótanos. Hay humedad aquí. Hay humedades. It's damp. Damp. See, kind of cold in the winter sometimes. Cuando hay llovizna, it's damp. It's damp. And the sheets. Tienes unas sábanas que falta una hora para que se sequen del todo. You put it next to your cheek and it's damp. Yeah. And so it's not completely wet. No, they're not wet, but they're not dry. Okay, they're damp. So this lady, this house, probably a housewife, it takes forever to dry those sheets. I don't know what material they're made of, but I can leave them out in the summer sun for 10 hours and they're still too damp to use. Demasiado húmedos para el uso, para usarlos. They are. En dos sitios aquí digo there. Contracción de they are. They're still too damp. They're still too damp to use. In rainy weather, I simply don't use them, no? Yeah. In rainy weather, en tiempo lluvioso, simplemente no los uso, y punto. Period. Full stop. In rainy weather, I simply don't use them. Okay, now you understand, right, Marta? Now, Marta understands. I mean, if Marta understands, anybody can understand, right? All right. So, one more time. It takes forever to dry those sheets. I don't know what kind of material they're made of, but I can leave them out in the summer sun for 10 hours, and they're still too damp to use. In rainy weather, I simply don't use them. You understand now? All right. Paragraph 144. We still have some time, eh? All right. Paragraph 144. I'm glad you had a chance to meet Charlie. He's a pretty nice fellow. Yeah, wow. I'm glad you had a chance to meet Charlie. I'm glad you had a chance. I'm glad you had a chance. I'm glad you had a chance to meet Charlie. Charlie, my friend Charlie. He's a pretty nice fellow, isn't he, eh? I guess he's a pretty nice fellow, isn't he? We met in the army and then ran into each other again several years later at a company convention. As it turned out, we had been working for the same company for 15 years without realizing it. All right. I'm glad you had a chance to meet Charlie. Me alegra que hayas tenido la oportunidad o una oportunidad de conocer a Carlitos, ¿no? Charlie, I'm glad, me alegro. I'm glad. I'm sorry. Lamento. I'm glad es me alegro. I'm glad you had a chance, an opportunity. I'm glad you had a chance to meet. Meet is conocer por vez primera. I'm glad you had a chance to meet Charlie. He's a pretty nice fellow. ¿A que sí? Isn't he? He's a pretty nice, bastante majo. Es un tipo bastante majo, ¿a que sí? He's a pretty nice fellow. He's a pretty nice guy. Isn't he? Yeah, Charlie? Yeah, he is. Campechano chico. He's a pretty nice guy. He's a pretty nice fellow. Pretty. Se usa 1000 veces al día pretty, como bastante. He's a pretty nice guy. Yeah, he's a pretty nice fellow, isn't he? Isn't he? Dice aquí, no? Yeah. He's a pretty nice fellow, isn't he? We met in the army and then ran into each other again several years later at a company convention. All right, una convención de la empresa. Okay. We met in the army. So I was in the army. In the army. In the army. In the army. You're in the army now. El otro es in the Navy. In the Navy. La Marina. La canción del army is you're in the army now. But I can't remember how the music goes. I can't remember the melody. Yes. Boom, 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 boom. You're in the army now. In the army. Well, we met in the army, Charlie and I. Charlie and I met in the army. And then ran into each other again. To run into is chocar contra. Aquí viene un coche, otro coche. It's a collision. The two cars ran into each other and produced a collision. All right, to run into each other. So physically, you can run into a tree, driving your car, run into a tree, or if you're walking, it happened to me in la biblioteca. I was walking looking at a pretty girl, and I ran into a pillar. to boom, run into a pillar. All right. And so you need to be careful. Now, physically, now to run into is also figurative. Tropezar con alguien, dar con alguien. Ah, mira, Pepe, tú aquí, ¿qué haces tú aquí? That's to run into. Encontrarse casualmente con alguien. To run into somebody. So, we met in the army and then ran into each other several years later. Well, ran into each other again several years later at a company convention. Convención de la compañía, de la empresa. As it turned out, tal como salió la cosa. As it turned out, resulta que, se diría aquí, resulta que, tal como resultó. As it turned out, pluscuamperfecto, we had been working in the same company for 15 years without realizing it, sin darnos cuenta, without realizing it. I'll come back and finish this a little bit tomorrow. Take care.